Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has been published by two different publishers over the years. It's a very interesting piece of history in terms of advocacy and the law in general, and it's the book about Thomas Erskine called Thomas Erskine and Trial by Jury, and it's been written by John Hostettler. It was originally published by Barry Rose Law Publishers, and it's now been republished in a new edition with update from Waterside Press. Now, I've given it a title, a celebration of the life of one of our greatest advocates, and that's a bit of an understatement. Let me show you the book first. This is actually the original edition, and that's the front and there's the spine. There's nothing on the back. You'll see it's quite an old one. There's the front page there, and there's a nice picture and some other works by John Hostettler. Then you get into the various chapters. You see they're nicely listed there, and you can see all of the various cases that he actually has been involved in. It goes up to 20 chapters. Then at the back there's a bibliography and an index. I'll just show you that as well. There's the index there. As I say, this is the old book, and obviously the newer version, there are the selected bibliographical details. The newer version is actually slightly different, but the content is fairly similar. You do have nice chapter headings then, you do have a certain amount of footnotes. And in fact, the typeface, of course, for this, there's another particular section of the book there. You do actually have as I say, not that much by way of footnoting, but you do have some. I found this a fascinating book, and the reason I started looking at it is because of the debate which has begun on the whole issue about whether we continue having trial by jury in some cases. This was raised by the Blair government at the turn of this century, when they were looking really at the costs of trial by jury in certain cases. For instance, low-level theft matters, in other words dishonesty matters, being one where there was a substantial amount of disagreement as to what should happen. However, having looked at the book, I realised it was much bigger than that, because I, like many people, didn't know a great deal about Thomas Erskine. Because as I say in our review today, Thomas Erskine, his dates are 1750 to 1823, is certainly not as well known and celebrated as he ought to be. He was, of course, one of the greatest advocates to appear in an English court of law, and such an accolade has obviously had much competition over the centuries. We can all think of our favourites, depending on which particular window on history, English legal history, you pick. But Erskine does stand out from his childhood, the way he actually came through various other different types of employment and profession, and ended up as a barrister. As I've indicated, the original edition of the work was published by Barry Rose in 1996, and the excellent Waterside Press took over and republished the original text in a new edition in 2010. Now, as a senior barrister at Lincoln's Inn and a King's Counsel, Erskine was involved in many celebrated trials, including the prosecution of John Horne Took for seditious libel and Queen Caroline for adultery. So in his day he was a really important and great figure, and one, of course, as I've indicated before, that we probably have heard about but we don't know much about, and that's why Hostettler's book is so helpful. Other notable achievements, of course, which Erskine covered, were the successful defence of Thomas Paine's Rights of Man, which cost him the post of Attorney General to the Prince of Wales. And he also served as a Member of Parliament for Portsmouth, and for just 1 year as Lord Chancellor. So he had a very distinguished history in terms of the legal profession itself. He became the first Baron Erskine, and the book actually covers his career and rise to high office. And it's very similar in some respects to another book that Hostettler wrote on Sir William Garrow, and many of you will have seen the TV programme and probably read our own reviews on the various books on William Garrow. It's obviously the book itself. This one has been given a lot of very interesting reviews, and I think one of the most important things to bear in mind is that 200 or so years after Erskine's death, most barrister and solicitor advocates still aspire to his legendary oratorical and forensic skills. I'd like to think that was the case, but I think we've entered a new era with advocacy actually in the last 10 years certainly, and I suspect that those days are really a bit have gone a little bit. However, I think there's still plenty of room for a bit of improvement in advocacy, and of course those who are not familiar with Erskine, we think would find it very useful to read this biography. I certainly found it very interesting because I didn't know that much about him either. Obviously he is well known to many members of the bar because he's one of the greatest names that we have had through our distinguished annals over the years. And the thing is, very few people actually know that much about him and his extraordinary life, from poverty through the Royal Navy and to membership of the Lincoln's Inn as a member of the bar, Parliament, the House of Lords and the Woolsack. So you've got quite an amazing range of things that he actually did. I think the last point that I'd like to make is one quote from Justice of the Peace magazine said, "With eloquent invective, Erskine mesmerised juries." And I think that's really quite an interesting comment to make. If you think about more modern types of advocate, such as Norman Burkitt, Marshall Hall, even much more recently George Carman. And of course we even today have a number, and I'm not going to mention them because some of them are still around and I would be probably embarrassing them if I did, but there are some very, very well respected and very, very excellent advocates today. This is the book. Let me just show it again. There it is there. And just opening it up, you see this is actually the beginning of his life there. Then it runs through to the impeachment, for instance, of Warren Hastings. So you see he's actually been involved in a whole range of matters. And then we get towards the end of the book, the Woolsack and his time there. I found it quite interesting. Ministry of all the talents. It's a little bit like what we had with Gordon Brown of government of all the talents, the goats. So you see we actually have had all of this before, Gordon, just so that you might like to know. Then there are various other points towards the end running through. It's a lovely little book. The actual hardback doesn't run to that many pages, 200 odd pages. As I say, I haven't got Waterside's book here to actually show you, but this particular book itself I think is well worth reading. I'd like to thank John Hostettler very much indeed for producing the original version and for actually getting it published again, because these legal biographies I think are of great help to us at the bar even today, because it gives us some idea of what our predecessors actually went through. So thank you to all concerned, and do get the book and read it. It's a great read. Thank you very much. Bye bye.